Welcome back. This is episode 7 of the Dope Stroke podcast. Myself, Chris Trottie Golf, is also here with Chris Ryan, internet extraordinaire coach. You can find him at Chris Ryan Golf over on YouTube. And of course, we've got the host with the most, Mr. Daryl Evans, the entrepreneur of Rocket Yard Sport. If you haven't found that out, we'll stick it all down in the description below. You can find this podcast on Spotify. We're also on YouTube as well. And of course, in podcasts in your Apple devices, wherever you go for that. Last week, we covered our top 10s, which got a little bit of controversy. I know Bubsy had some interesting comments to say about Mr. Rory McIlory, which clearly has inspired him to go and win his 6th Order of Merit on the European Tour. Bubsy, do you have anything to say in defense about those rather rude comments that you made about Rory last week?
I do feel like I need to defend myself. I am the biggest Rory fan. But I did say last week that he had a habit of just coming second and he wasn't able to get it done. But in my defense, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera, I am a golf coach at heart. My job is to make people play better. It's not always through mechanics or ball flights. It's sometimes through what you say. I know Rory's a listener. I know he's listened to every single episode. And I chose my words wisely last week, knowing that he was listening. And I knew that I would just say the right thing, just to kind of hit the spot with Rory. He would go on to win. He did exactly that. I know that I deserve a lot of the credit. Maybe some would say even part of the prize fund. We'll maybe see if we can speak to Rory about that. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's emailed in Daryl to say thank you. Has he?
We've had a long email come through from Rory. I think he said something about 5% on-course earnings, but don't quote me on that. I'm just kind of doing that by memory.
That will do.
But hey, obviously the success of his golf last week is clearly down to you. So in case people aren't aware of that, we should make sure that this spreads far and wide. So please, general public, go out there, tell your friends, tell your family that if it wasn't for Bubs, Rory McIlory would have choked again and finished second. So
he would.
Thanks, Bubs. Well done for your contribution to the wonderful game of golf and getting Rory to win his 6th, can you believe it, his 6th Order of Merit title. Trottie, as someone that knows Rory and done some work with Rory over the years, how do you? What's your perspective on that level of success that he's had within the game to go on to win 6 Order of Merits, going on to equal the late and great Seve Ballesteros?
I think to kick it off, it's phenomenal. What Rory does for the game of golf is absolutely unbelievable. Now living and spending time between the United States and obviously Ireland, you've got such a global schedule, such a huge brand. The demands on him as a person, as a family guy, as a golfer are way different to what they were back in the 70s and 80s when Seve had this domination. Not taking anything away from Seve. I know we're going to touch on him this week in the podcast, as we rightly so should. But keeping it to Rory, just the demands, like I say, on his time, the demands on him from equipment companies, from sponsors, from corporate partners, to be able to achieve this across a global stage, which if you're going to win that Order of Merit now, looks significantly different to what it did when Seve achieved that. You would go and play all parts of Europe when Seve did it. Yes, it was traveling sometimes in a car from places to places. I'm sure that it was tricky. There was no Apple Maps to get you around. There was no delay notifications on the aircraft and things like that. Much, much different beast. The agronomy, the golf course is different. The competition different. The equipment different. But Rory, equipment today, travel today, what it costs to do that, what it requires, what it demands of him, dipping into the Middle East, going into Asia, dealing with those time changes, the sacrifices away from home to do it, phenomenal. So I don't know which one, and it's going to be a question that I'm going to think about, is a greater achievement, whether it's Seve's efforts to beat, and this might be controversial, a group of players where the competition was much less. And the reason is because I think there was very few guys that could win with blades and a persimmon. Or is Rory's achievement greater based on he's got a deeper level of competition to beat, because even I can hit a QI10 somewhere near the center. So, you know, you've got players that there are names, and we can go through it, that have qualified for the PGA Tour, greatest of respect. Is this, I think the layman is not going to know a lot of these names that have now got their PGA Tour cards through that European Tour ranking. So the competition's deeper. It's different.
I think it is different. I'm not so sure that the challenge is you can't really compare apples with apples here because, like you've just said, the agronomy is different, the golf clubs are different, the way that the golfers are built physically, it's different today than it was in yesteryear. Like the game has moved on to a different. It's a different experience for these guys now. So I'm not so sure totally if it is really that comparable in that sense. However, we do have to kind of look at how the tours are structured now. And there's been several changes that have been made to the European Tour over the last few years. In particular, when the previous CEO was there, he made a whole bunch of changes, which has definitely affected how the tour looks and how it can be shaped and crafted. But I'm just looking at the order of merit in the top 10 order of merit that Rory McIlory topped last week, and also Seve's final order of merit win, which was back in 1991. And the stark thing that's different on both of those order of merits for me is that Rory McIlory is a four-time major winner. We know that. The only other major winner in the top 10 of the order of merit was Adam Scott, who's won a Masters. So there's 5 majors between the two of them. When you rewind the clock back to 1991, there were 5 major champions in that order of merit. One of them is probably one of the greatest golfers to never win a major, by the way, which is Colin Montgomerie. But in that particular order of merit, I want to reel off some of these names. Number 1 was Seve Ballesteros, 5 majors. Langer, he was 3rd with 2 majors. You had Lathabel, 2 majors. Woosnam, 1 major. Nick Faldo, 6 majors. So when you compare 5 major wins, 4 of those for Rory, Adam Scott had 1. This is obviously this is this season. And you go back to 1991, there are 16 majors between those 5 guys. For me, that just tells me that there were a lot of really high-level quality players that continued to play the European Tour back then. But as some of these changes have come into the game, in particular on the European Tour, what's happened is that those better players have migrated over to the PGA Tour. So I actually think to win order of merits now on the PGA Tour is almost not quite the same, but it's almost more comparable to what Seve did, certainly in his final order of merit win back in 1991. But hey, I want to say hats off to Rory McIlory and just echo a bit of Trottie sentiment here. What he has done for the game has been exceptional. I mean, he's a generational talent, and you only have to see how long he's been around for. I think it's his 17th season, he said the other day. So to be sort of in that top 5 in the world rankings for that length of time and be at the level that he operates at day in, day out, I mean, you have to applaud that. Even if I don't believe that it's that comparable to what Seve achieved, I still think what he's achieved is a great thing for the game. It's a great thing for the European Tour. And I would love to see him go on to win another 1, 2, 3 order of merits as the years roll on by. But Chris, from your perspective, obviously you're the guy that's taking all the credit for Rory's success. So I'm really keen to get your perspective on the situation and really get a deep understanding as to what you think this means for Rory and what it means for the game as a whole.
It is very, very different what he's done in his 6 order of merits compared to Seve. Back when I grew up watching European Tour golf, the best that Europe could produce, and there was obviously some players from South Africa and Australia, but they all played in Europe. That was where you played your golf, and every now and then you'd nip over to the US to play the majors and some of the big events, and you'd come back and play in Europe. What Rory's done is win 6 order merits basically whilst playing multiple tours. He's US based, that's his main tour card. But this year he's played more events on the DP World Tour. He's played 12 events. Previous 2 years he's only played 10. So he is effectively putting his game across 2 tours and winning an order of merit on a tour where he's not basically 100% dedicated. To me, that is impressive, really impressive, because that requires a different level of scheduling. That requires different time zones. Going and playing a tournament in the US where he's got to hit 9 iron a yard short of the pin, knowing that it's going to hop and stop. Then he's got to come over and play the Irish Open where he's got to land it short and roll it over. He's got to play the Scottish. He's got to play at Wentworth where the temperature's different. I think it's a very, very different skill set that he's got now. And he does all that. He plays US Tour, performs incredibly well, comes over, wins the European Order of Merit, and is an incredible spokesperson for the game of golf. He is an incredible Ryder Cup player. I just think you look at him, and as golf as an industry, especially here in Europe, we could not ask for a better representative than Rory McIlory right at the moment. I think what he's doing is super impressive.
He's not. If you look at this, I'm just going through now. He's first in the Dubai tournament. Didn't play then till the Masters was the next tournament that counted. 22nd, 12th in the USPGA, second in the US Open. Then popped back for the Genesis, finished fourth in Scotland. Then it says tournament position 125th at the Open, so he missed the cut. Then he finished second in the Irish Open, so he went back for his home tournament, second at the BMW PGA Championship. That's kind of the two that got him in the mix. 25th at the Alfred Dunhill, and then a third and a first these last 2 weeks. I mean, but if you threw in all the US stuff, I'm sure he's finished great on his PGA Tour stuff. If you went through that, it's just hard, isn't it? I took some stick on the top 10 ranking DM wise for putting Tommy Fleetwood in there. We all took stick, by the way. I just never told you boys this last week. And people are like, he doesn't win enough. But he's unbelievable. Like live in person, he's different level. Like I was with Adrian Reitveld from TaylorMade this week, who works out on the tour. And we were doing he was actually giving me some advice on a driver. I was hitting a driver that TaylorMade has. And we were talking, and Fleetwood came up, and we're just talking about the new putter that Fleetwood has, how putting is such a factor for him, but just his ability as a golfer. And I think when you have two people like Adrian and myself talking about one particular player, and you look at that skill set, and we know we covered this last week, but it's skill set. And I really think that the world ranked today and the order of merits today, they just look very different than what they did of yesteryear. And just to sort of add to that and get your opinion on it, because everyone tries to compare generation to generation. It's always, I was even on a range with Tom Watson on the Champions Tour when I first moved to America. And he's through gritted teeth at 57, 58, telling me that he hits it as good as Rory McIlory. It's just that at that time he was 30 years older. And you're watching this old guy willing 3-irons down the range. And it's amazing, like the grit at that age that he has. And it reminded me quite a bit of like what Mike Tyson went and did this weekend against Jake Paul. 58 years old going in the ring against a 27-year-old. I mean, it's impressive. I watched. It looked a bit exhibition-y, but you just desperately wanted to see Tyson win,
Yeah, I didn't actually watch the Tyson-Jake Paul fight. I did follow quite a bit of it just through the sports pages, really, and the sports news. Did look a little bbit exhibition-y, I suppose was the word, a bit like runny, like a golf course. But, that's how it looked to me. But at the end of the day, those things are bringing in eyeballs, it's bringing in new people, new experiences into the sport. But then I also think in a lot of sports, football included, or soccer for our US listeners, the world is trying to change all sorts of sports in different leagues and different formats. It just seems to be a thing that we're trying to change and be disruptive across the board on all sorts of sports. Is that really that necessary as we look at Denny Trottie's dog on screen? I don't know. Maybe Denny can answer this one. It sounds like he's ready to give us a bark. But yeah, I just think there's too much change going on in the world of sport generally. Let's not fix what's not broke.
I did see. I can't remember who posted about it now. It was one of the golf outlets, one of the US golf outlets, and they posted that following the fight on Saturday night, Bryson has taken inspiration, and he has set up a long drive competition between himself and Jack Nicklaus.
Jeez.
I mean,
Brilliant.
It was, but I think going back to that fight, and you've got. The history of any sport is so important, right? And there'll be people now growing up who never got to witness Tiger Woods play golf at the level that he played. But through social media, through YouTube, they can see highlights. And because of that, if Tiger decided to play an exhibition match when he was 65, people would go and watch. And they're not going and expecting him to play like he did back in the 2000s, but it's just that opportunity to witness a legend. And I think that's why so many people would have tuned in to that fight, because there's a chance that they will see a glimpse of something that they potentially used to see back in the day or have never had the opportunity to see. And it's always going to drag eyeballs in. I'm not so sure that morally it's the right thing to do. But, hey, it pulls the eyeballs in and that's business.
It's not morally the right thing to do, is it? And it's just like when you sit here and you try and compare Seve to Rory, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. Seve was so charismatic, such a driving force for the Ryder Cup. If you listen to Rory's post-interviews, they were so respectful of Seve, much like Jake Paul's were a just edit that out. Jake Paul's were a Tyson. Just so respectful of the guy. You know what I mean? And I think that's where we land on all this. You have these huge levels of respect from generation to generation because you don't get where we are today without Seve. We don't get where we are today without Tyson.
Let me ask you both a question then, because I'm interested on your thoughts on this. Rory was, as you say, he was asked about Seve and he was getting really emotional. He had to take a pause to gather his thoughts. You can see he was getting really emotional about Seve. Seve's won 6, Rory's won 6, Monty's won 8. Why is Monty not seen in the same light as Seve? Why do people not speak about Monty in the same way that they do about Seve? Is it the majors, or is it maybe his perception, or the way he wasn't someone who galvanized a Ryder Cup team, was he, like a Seve was? Do you think that's the reason?
Well, I do.
Charisma. It's charisma.
Yeah, exactly. Charisma is important, but winning with charisma is even more important. The fact that he went on to win 5 major championships, that is big. And when you have the personality that he did, it's just fireworks for the game of golf at the time that he was at the peak of his powers. I mean, it's fantastic for the game back then. Whereas Monty, no question, he was a fantastically outstanding golfer across the board. To go out and win 8 Order of Merit is colossal, but you only realistically get remembered for the majors. And I think the majors is the greatest scorecard for success in golf. That's how I would look at that, which is why he will never get the same type of plaudits as Seve and others like Faldo, for example, have earned for themselves during their career. That would be my perspective on the situation. But no taking anything away from Monty. Great player, 8 Order of Merits, fantastic achievement. Do I think Rory's going to go on to better that? I do, actually. I think provided the current format and the way that they run the tours is the same, I definitely think that he will go on to at least equal, if not surpass, what Monty achieved.
He's only 35.
What age is? I was going to say he's 35, is he?
35,
I mean,
yeah.
But he doesn't need to keep playing. He could be done. It could have been done 5 years ago if he wanted to financially. And I saw that he made some comments about obviously being away from the family, and hopefully they understand the hard work now as they get older and things like that. I think if you look at it, you realize that he's going to keep going for sure. I mean, he recognizes that his whole life is a brand for this game, so he will keep going.
Yeah, what's
a lot of pressure on him?
Monty's won the most with 8, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Rory's going to keep going for sure.
Yeah. I mean, looking at this, in 2024, Rory played 27 events. So that's the most since 2010. So he's increased his tournament schedule. And of those 27, 12 were DP World Tour. Now, obviously, majors count for both tours, but 27 events, 12 of those on the DP World Tour. That is pretty much not far off a 50-50 split between, PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. I think that's good, because I don't think it gives the DP World Tour a great image if somebody just comes back and plays 3 or 4 events and wins the Order of Merit. And there's guys out there, knocking out 27, 28 events who can't get near that. But I think 12 events shows a level of dedication that is, commendable.
Yeah,
4
that's
of them
actually
were
really
majors, mate. Hang on, 4 of them were majors. So it's 8 events.
Yeah.
And of those 8, I think 4 of them were in the Middle East. So
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of them are Rolex tournaments.
Yeah.
week before the Open at the Scottish Open, which makes sense for the schedule.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of the PGA Tour players would do.
Yeah. And then the Irish, because it's home.
Yeah. But you only have to look at that order of merit. Like, I'm just looking at it now. So Ludwig Oberg, he's 26 on the order of merit, played 5 events. So it does, and I know obviously there's been a rule change. This is a few years ago now about minimum number of events in order to be eligible to be on the order of merit, and that was reduced. I can't remember the exact numbers. I think Trottie might know, maybe not, but I'm pretty sure it used to be a minimum of something like 11 tournaments, and then dropped itself down to 4, excluding majors.
Is that what it is? 4?
It was something
8,
small,
8 total, yeah, and that's for Ryder Cup qualification. That's how they keep them in there,
right?
Right.
So, but I'm just looking down
look,
order.
if you, exactly, I'm doing the same thing as you say it. If you look at this order of merit, Højgaard now gets his PGA Tour card. Darrell's buddy Tristan Lawrence gets it. My man Waring gets it. Then you go all the way down because the next 4 names have it already. Jesper Svensson, I'm going to stand here and say I've never seen him hit a golf ball, as horrible as that sound. Nicholas Højgaard, Matteo Manacero back in the mixer. Thorbjørn Olesen back. Then Matt Wallace has already got a card. Anton Rosner. And then Hoshino, again, random. Tom McGibbon. I mean, that's awesome for Tom McGibbon, by the way. He's been tipped to be a great player. So he's your last man in. But, I mean, there's 3 or 4 names there struggling. And that's me struggling.
Yeah. But what does that tell you, though? For someone that lives in the States like you do, I guess you're not watching a lot of European Tour golf, unless maybe it's the big uns. Although I'm seeing the gesture of Zilcho. That's how much you watch. So I guess it's natural.
With the time change.
Yeah, I get that. It's probably like watching the Japan Golf Tour or Asian Tour, maybe even the Corn Ferry Tour, because you're more likely to watch PGA Tour events because of your time zone and because of the status and the size of those particular events as well.
I mean, we're back into another conversation there.
We are, yeah.
Which
that's a whole other topic.
It's hard to watch golf events now. You A, middle life is well upon us. B, you freaking, it's just tough, mate. I'll watch the Masters and I'll watch the Ryder Cup. And I'll be honest, I try and watch the Open because I love it. But I mean, US Open, and that's kind of me done. To be fair, I did watch a bit of Wentworth. I did watch a little bit of Wentworth.
See, what's going to happen now, surely, is the way it's structured now, those 10 places, for those who haven't already got their tour cards on the PGA Tour, get their tour cards. Trottie's just listed those 10. It's going to be very difficult for someone like a Tom McKibben to play both tours, right? He's got to go, right, I'm pretty young, I'm not that experienced. He's probably going to go, I've got to go all in PGA Tour and play that. So he might not play DP World Tour next year, I don't know. But let's say he doesn't. What you've then got is you've then got people like Rory, Tyrrell, Billy Horschel, Tommy Fleetwood, who are world-class players who have got the ability to play both schedules, competing then against basically the people who are currently at 25th, 26th, which is like Guido and Julien Guerrer and Laurie Cantor. It's suddenly getting this huge gap, whereas these guys are trying to compete against Rory. So I'm saying every year, if you're losing those 10, it's almost like Man City playing Grimsby. It's going to be so difficult.
But Bubsy, that is world golf now, and it always has been. People talk about, Q School, not what it was. Go to Q School, finish in the top, however, at stage 1, go to stage 2. Finish in the top, however, there, go to the final. Finish in the top there, give yourself a Q School ranking card. Guess what? You need to win, son, because you ain't going to get many starts off that card. They're going to be low bottom feeder events. Same on the Asian Tour when that was back in the day. Get yourself your Asian Tour card. You're hardly going to have any starts. Someone like, name may not ring a bell with everyone, but David Lipsky, American kid. Kurt Kitayama, American kid. They all went to Asia. They all won in Asia. They all then progressed European Tour. Adam Scott did the same. Then they go and win on that tour. Then they win in Europe. Then they get to the PGA Tour. So, you know what? If you're a low-end bottom feeder, you've just got your PGA Tour card, and you haven't won on the tour, if you're Paul Waring, you're in a great spot. But if you're not Paul Waring and you're one of these young names, you're going to have to pay your dues, and you're going to have to make a decision. take a shit or get off the pan, as my old man would say to me, and you're going to have to sack up and get it done. I mean, our boy Lloyd's given us names here down the chat. Dyson, another one, just went and got it done. But they go on and on and on. Scott Drummond won the PGA Championship, gets 5 years on the tour. He won the PGA Championship from a Q school category. I mean, that is pro golf. You're going to get 20 chances to play, maybe 18. You might have to go to Nebraska or middle of nowhere to do it, but you're going to get your shot. You got to take your shot. Otherwise, you're out. So it is what it is.
When you look at Q School graduates, I think it's about only 3 of the 25 guys that get a card actually keep their card for the following year after their sort of debut season out on the European Tour. So my point being, which I support fully, actually, what Trottie's saying there, when you get a chance, you got to take a chance. You got to go for it. But I do also think it's kind of a little bit funny now because of the way that the tour points work and how the allocation looks. I reckon quite a lot of these Q School guys might actually get a few extra shots at the title than they otherwise would have had. But the downside is that they're also playing for a lot less points because of how varied those points dynamics actually work on the tour. But yeah, I agree with that. If you get a sniff at the title, you got to go for it. You just got to go. There's nothing else you can do. You've got to go for it. And obviously, you have to look at Q School. Results also came out last week, and the number of ex-European Tour pros that are sort of, let's call them veterans of the tour, they all finish in the top 25. They're all coming back next year because they can golf their ball, and they're all bloody good golfers. But it does beg the question, and I know Trottie wants to say something about that, but it does beg the question as Rory McIlory, 35, still got a long way to go in his career. But when I'm looking down the order of merit now, who is going to be and I don't want to say the next Rory, but who's going to be that next European sort of thoroughbred that's going to come through to really dominate the European Tour? Which names are we looking at? I know obviously Tom McKibben's just been mentioned. You got the Højgaard twins as well. There's a group of players there. But how loyal will they be to the European Tour to see that succeed in the same way, going back to yesteryear, when Faldo, Seve, Langer, and Latherbell were dominating the scene? I'm quite keen to see how these next 3, 4, 5 years will roll out, because I don't think we'll ever see that time again. I think those days are gone.
You're smarter than this. You're smarter than this. How can you sit here and say, I don't think we'll ever? We'll never. It's done, mate. It's over. And I'll tell you for why. No, Bryn. It's over because Jon Rahm is your last one who grew up idolizing Seve, knowing the importance of the Spanish Open, then has to get back and play that thing because of that. So the only way that it happens again is if someone idolizes Jon. And Jon is a mega, mega athlete, not as charismatic as Seve, but a Spanish kid could idolize Jon. That'll keep it going. But the truth is, the business side of the tour has not been taken care of. Now the tour has suffered. The money isn't raised that is on offer on the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour is the place to be. You will have a player come out of the world somewhere who will dominate that PGA Tour again at some point in time. But again, the competition is so difficult. I mean, Scotty's just had the year of his life. Guess what? Tiger did that for a decade and a half. I don't think we realize how fortunate we are to have witnessed that Tiger trend, to have seen that phenomenal golf career happen. I took it for granted, 100%. I didn't realize how amazing it was. I'm not sure I'll see it again in my lifetime. And I got quite a long way to go. And that's upsetting. But, Jack was amazing. I didn't see any of that. Hogan was amazing. I didn't see any of that. Palmer was amazing. I compare him a little bit, which will be controversial, but like a Mickelson character. Obviously a businessman, knew how to freaking get it done as well. Won his share of tournaments, charismatic in his own way. Now Phil's gone on to be the talisman for Liv, really, to die on the sword a little bit with that. I'm sure that's a whole other podcast that we can cover. But the bottom line is, if you're talking about these names, it's going to be PGA Tour now just because the landscape has changed. And guess what? Who knows where it's going to be? It could be Liv Tour. It could be.
Mhm.
That's a realistic chance. And this is all going to play out in the boardrooms, just as it has to this point, which is why we are where we are with the European Tour. Supposedly the DP World Tour. I don't even know what DP is, and I'm sure many people don't.
Dubai
It's
ports, actually,
all right.
just so you know.
Dubai ports. I mean, it's not even in Europe, though. If we break it all down, so that tour's dead anyway, because it's the Dubai ports tour.
Well,
Yeah, and I think to your point, actually, John Rahm in the final event, so he qualified for the DP World Tour Championship, and he didn't play. So I think that probably says enough about where the European Tour is. And yes, he will always want to play, I think, in Spain. I understand. And he would do so because he's got a fan base there, and he's obviously a massive Seve fan, like you pointed out. So I can definitely see how that works. But the fact that he didn't play in Dubai last week, I think that says a lot about what the standing of the tour is in the world of golf right now.
Pathetic.
I 100% agree with what Trottie said, that, someone like a Rory idolized Seve, wants to sort of keep that name alive by playing the DP World Tour. But I think there's two things at play there. Yes, Rory looked up to Seve, but he also grew up at a time when the DP World Tour European Tour was still pretty strong. So he's probably thinking, I want to support the legacy that Seve created and still try and hold on to this European Tour that was so great. When you've got people like the Hogard twins growing up now, where's their incentive to keep the DP World Tour alive? Because it right in front of their eyes, it's declining, it's becoming a poorer product. So as soon as they get the opportunity to go, they're going to go. And yeah, they're going to come back and play their home open, but I do not see the sort of 20-something-year-olds currently in 10, 15 years' time trying to play DP World Tour because they're trying to keep that tour alive. It's just not going to happen.
The modern day gamer, no mess around, go get it done, is Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler. And the modern day, I'm the complete package professional entertainer, is Bryson DeChambeau. And the modern day global player is Rory McIlory. That's basically your four right now. And Xander gets in because if you look at golf statistics, it's a stretch of period of time when these guys max out and win their tournament. And the first real one to do that was probably Woozy. I know a little bit about his career and watching it. And if you look at the build-up to him winning the Masters, when he won it, he was different gravy. And that was like going to be his thing. Wins it, drifts away. You can easily replicate that years on. Jason Day and the run-in to become that major champion, win what he won, ridiculous. Adam Scott, the run-in to get that done, ridiculous. So it goes for short bursts, which again is why it's so impressive when you look down, because in that generations we've talked about, Ernie Els, multiple majors, Goose, multiple majors. People might not even know them. I've realized when you post about them, guys don't even know anymore because the kids aren't watching this. All right, let's bring it more modern day. Harrington, again, people might be like, don't know who the hell he is, which is so disrespectful, it's a joke. But the multiple majors, your guy who gets it done, Rory. So multiple. Bryson, multiple. Xander, multiple.
Xander and Schauffele. Then you said the global player is Rory. Then you said the kind of new era is Bryson. In your view, Trottie, which of those is better for the game of golf?
Bryson. Because the game of golf isn't us anymore. I hate to admit it, but I've accepted it. Like I went away, I'd put myself maybe just in John Rahm's generation, and I have a huge interest in the history of the game. I don't think as many people today care, because golf media is changing a little bit. I don't think they care about the Persimmon and Hogan's Alley and Carnoustie and the 53 Open Championship. I don't think they care. And I do still care about that. But a golf historian is becoming less and less. And now it's more about, well, where do you play in the world? How many followers have you got? What's your YouTube channel look like? But, I mean, in terms of outright respect and who I'd want to play with out of those names, I'd pick Xander just because he's a flipping gamer, and that's all he is. I mean, he's a nice lad too, but he's an out-and-out gamer. But in terms of who you want representing your brand, depends on where you sell your brand, but Rory's the man.
But I'll tell you what is interesting about that. When we grew up playing golf, right, there was no phones, there was no social media. we're all sounding really old here, but there wasn't, was there? So we loved golf, right? We'd play golf, we'd watch a bit on TV, and then you'd be like, I love this game. I want to find out more about it. I want to learn about the greats of the game, and I want to learn about some of the great tournaments. If you're a teenager now and you love golf, on your phone, you've just got 24/7 stuff that's happening right now. You know, good. You've got Bryson doing YouTube. There's no need or no time or mental capacity to go, I'm going to go and look at the olden days, because you're just bombarded with stuff now. You know, there's so much coming your way that you're happy with what you're getting. You know what I mean? You don't need to go and delve back into the day like we used to.
But mate, it's not even relatable. That's the thing. It's not even like, these kids have never seen a persimmon driver. They don't know what a Ballata is. I grew up knowing what those things were, but they do know what YouTube is. They do know what Good is. They do know what golf entertainment is. You know, having met some of the lads from Good and the Horvats and the people like that, there is a level of respect for the stuff that happens on the tour. Of course there is. But they also, I mean, Wesley Bryan and the Bryan brothers and those lads, they play on tour.
Yeah.
So it's just an awesome switch that's happening. And I don't think that, you know, nostalgia can get the better of all of us, but you have to have huge respect for where it's going. I really think you do. And for me, none of it happens without the evolution of Seve, the charisma he brought, without what Rory's done, and of course, without the legend, the Messiah, Tiger Woods. We don't start to get to this world. Yeah, the world's improved and changed and things have happened for the better maybe, but we don't get here without those ballers.
Yeah, I do think, though, there is a lot of people that would still follow and still interested in the traditions of the game and historical winners of key events. I still think that is something that a group of people would be interested in, especially for golfers who end up becoming quite good. So the closer they get to scratch, the more interested they get. But the reality is there's more, there's just more levels of entertainment that they can access in the world of golf. And I don't think any of that is bad. I just think there's just more, and more is more. And Troy's got his hand up, so I'm going to let him.
Do you know, amazing thing I saw the other day, and this is a credit to everything that we're doing, so a bit of a pat on our back, because I think we've acknowledged it, but the data showed it. I think it's the 18-year-olds to the 35-year-olds now are the number one participant in the game of golf, and the 50 to the 65-year-old lads they've gone number two. I think that's the first time ever in golf, isn't it, McD?
It is, yeah. It's the first time that's ever happened, and that's only a good thing for the game of golf, because I think for the first time, golf by the younger generation has actually seemed to be quite cool. It's not always seemed to be stuffy and different, and Trottie's got his hand up again, so he wants to butt in again. So far away, Trottie, crack on.
It is the toilet.
It's not great for the game of... Yeah, it's not great for the game of golf, because I'm not approaching, actually. I've got a long way to go until I get into the old category, but I was looking forward to being the alpha dog in the old category. And now I'm going to get there, and the alpha dogs are going to be the kids again.
No, I reckon you can still get there, mate. You know what you're like. You'll still dominate your 50 to 60 age group when you get there. So don't worry. You got that covered.
After I've come through the yips on every single club in the bag, for sure. Anyway.
As long as you don't start anchoring your putter, you'll be all right.
I've already been there and done it. So look, lads, I've got, I know Lloyd's got pressing things to do, and so have I. And my dog now has finally fallen asleep and settled down. But I want to close this podcast, or at least approach the close, and just ask the question. And I want you to answer it truthfully. I don't want you to give me which one you feel you should answer for the corporate bollocks of this world.
Tommy Fleetwood. Oh.
Paul Waring. Which are you more impressed by, Seve or Rory?
Easy for me.
Seve. Easy?
Yeah, it is easy for me. Seve all day long, yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to add to that?
Rory for me.
Interesting.
What about you, Troy?
Why Rory for you first, Bubs?
Just because I think, Seve probably had to beat a better caliber of player. But I think, going back to what I was saying before, I think what Rory has to do is balance two tours. Probably stuff that we don't really get insight to in terms of the family life. You know, if his family's in the US and he's playing in Europe, he's away from his family. He's playing different types of golf courses in the links and the US style. He is very much a spokesperson for the game of golf. There's a lot of attention on him wherever he goes. So I just think back in Seve's day, I feel like he could 100% focus on just playing golf. And I look at Rory and I think Rory's probably got more plates that he's currently trying to spin. And I think when you look at Rory, I think he does that incredibly well. And for me, that just edges it.
And why did you say Seve, Dazzler?
I think that all of those things you said, Bubs, is what Seve had to do as well. I mean, he won on around Augusta, massive parkland golf course. He won on links golf courses. He played on golf courses that weren't always in great conditions. He won in Switzerland, where altitude's really high. He won at sea level. I think he's done it all in the game. I see his son sometimes at certain events I go to. He had a family himself. At a time where I think
he didn't have launch monitors. He didn't have all the. He was diving into the Mac O'Grady stuff. He was really trying to learn about the golf machine, which might have messed him up a bit. He was over in the States in Nevada, practicing in Vegas a lot with Butch. He had the caddy out there pacing the golf course. He was charismatic with the TV.
Yeah. But he was talented. I want to just say this last thing about Seve, actually, that I think is quite impressive. Was years ago when we were all PJ pros at the Belfry, Seve was there and he did a masterclass for us and a small group of people on the 17th on the PJ National. I don't know if you guys were there for that. And he threw the 2-iron into the bunker. Did you see that? So the ball was just in the bunker. He was stood about 3 or 4 yards away from the golf ball, and the bunker is probably about 6 foot-ish deep. And he threw the 2-iron into the back of the ball, let go of the club completely. Ball spins in midair, hits the back of the ball, and the ball pops up onto the green. I mean, who would even think to do that in practice? And he's just there doing it as if it was easy. So for me, at a time with difficult golf clubs, golf courses, all of these things, that's why I think he tops it for me. And the charisma to bring people together in the way that he did and excite people in the way that he did is definitely outstanding. But Rory McIlory is amazing. I don't want to dispute that. But what I'm saying, for me, based on your question, Trottie, Seve gets the nod. What about you?
I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
Thanks.
Someone recorded that? I was thinking about that clinic the other day. Someone recorded that, didn't they, on a videotape?
Is it Froggy?
The whole thing.
But I don't know who did.
I think it was Froggy.
Was it? Okay, I can't remember. Yeah, that was amazing though. What a clinic that was.
In answer to it, I want to answer Seve, to be honest with you, for all the reasons you've said, but it's very hard, and I feel a lot of people won't understand that answer, but I want to answer Seve. And that's just because it's my answer. But if I was being corporate, I think I'd probably say Rory. And look, I think Rory's phenomenal. Jesus Christ, what an honour to even been around the guy. But even he himself, I think, and maybe I'll ask him and I'll get back to you. But I will ask him, actually. I'm seeing him in a couple of weeks. I'll ask him and I'll let you know what he says. That's a good question, isn't it?
It is a good question. I think you should definitely ask that, and let's see what he has to say. But let's think about wrapping up here. And I've got an email, which I'm going to read out this time. No, not from Rory, although he did compliment you on your coaching skills. This is due to our beer situation. And this time I'm going to read it out because obviously I totally fucked up last time. So I'm just going to roll with it this time. But the email says as follows. Hey guys, hope this finds you well. I was just scrolling through some old photos on my phone and I stumbled upon one that instantly brought a smile to my face. Wanted to share the memory with you. It was a few years back on this tiny, scruffy 9-hole course in Texas. You know the type, sheep wandering across the fairway, greens more like browns, but man, what a day. I was out there with Tommy, my golfing buddy, not Tommy Fleetwood, just to make that perfectly clear for all those critics out there, just messing around, not really caring about our scores. On the 7th hole, I hit the most ridiculous shot of my life. Ball's deep in the rough. I'm already laughing because I know it's a lost cause. Somehow, I take a swing and miraculously the ball ricochets off a tree and lands dead center of the hole. Tommy drops to the ground, howling, tears streaming down his face. We celebrate like I just won the Masters. And here's the kicker. Our post-round tradition involved cracking open a couple of cold, I'm not sure about this one, Timothy Taylor's Landlord Ales from the clubhouse fridge. It wasn't just any beer. It had the perfect malty kick that tasted even better with the smell of cut grass and the sound of distant banter from the 19th hole. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. Let's get out for a round soon and maybe track down some Landlord for afterwards. Cheers, Colin. Thanks, Colin. Thanks for sending that in. Really appreciate it.
Do you know what's so good about that? Is how that shows how you can have the most incredible days golfing on an awful course if you're with the right people. And it's just golf to a tee, isn't it?
It is golf to a tee.
I've been thinking about beer recently because I switched to and it's hard to get here in the States, but I switched to Guinness because it's getting a bit colder in San Diego. It's gone down to like 60 degrees. So
sounds terrible.
Yeah. And it reminded me of one of the best Guinness I'd ever had, which was the Old Head in Ireland. And I had a Guinness looking over that golf course. Quality. I mean, I'm getting that straight in the top 10. But hey, look, Colin's beers, totally understand. And the fact that he's got some great memories and you can connect him to it is phenomenal.
Can I just finish with a story based on that? So my brother-in-law, he's a golfer. He's not a member anywhere. He's like a recreational golfer. He'll play 10 or 12 times a year. Plays a lot through work. And sometimes he gets some work opportunities. He'll invite me. So he sends me a message a couple of years ago. He says, mate, I reckon I can get you on Old Head. We've got a golf day. I'm like, okay, see what we can do. Speak to him a couple of times. He's like, struggling, mate. We've got, I think it was like 15. He goes, no one's dropped out. Can't get you on. I'm like, no problem. This was like way, way in advance. He's playing this Old Head. And he's showing me pictures of the course. And he's showing all his mates pictures of the course. He's got the lighthouse. And he's just like, he cannot like wait for this. He turns up there. It's delayed by an hour and a half because there's thick fog. They eventually let him go out. He can't see a thing. Doesn't see any of the views. Doesn't see any of the sights. All he can see is about 150 yards in front of him. And he plays 18 holes like
that. Brilliant.
Brutal, isn't it? I mean, that's the problem with the place. It's just brutal. But, I mean, what a place if you get it on a good day. We had it in like 20-mile-an-hour winds. It was tough. There you go, guys. Dope Stroke Podcast, episode 7 in the bank. Let us know in the comments below or wherever you are watching this. Who do you think has the greater achievement? Is it Mr. Seve Ballesteros or is it Mr. Rory McIlory? We want to know. Until next time, we're coming back with some guests next week, so we're going to be back stronger. Be sure to tune in then. See you soon, boys. Take it easy.
Thanks, fellas.